So again, welcome back here to the afternoon session of the U.S. East Coast Cert Jam. So hopefully, like I said, you had a chance to get some lunch, take the exam, and so now we're going to get into this afternoon's material. Good news, this one does particularly run fairly well on time. So it's 2 hours of lecture and lab, and then an hour of certification. And once you're done with the certification, you're of course welcome to sign out of the class and have yourselves a great day. But first, let's get there. One other thing I wanted to mention to you, and that is for those of you who might be going to AWS reInvent, which is right after the Thanksgiving holiday here in the United States, Scott and I will both be there. So we'll be in booth, I think, 166. So if you get a chance, come on by, say hi. We'd love to, see you face to face. So that is that. All right, video off. Let's get our party started here. So we're going to talk about the Cloud Security Information and Event Management Fundamentals course. This is one of 4 new certifications that we created during our last Illuminate event. Last month, we had our annual gathering. We did it virtually and added some training and stuff associated with that, but we created 4 new courses. This Cloud SIEM Fundamentals was one of those courses. Another one was the Cloud SIEM Administration, as well as 2 for the observability. Scott, something you want to add, sir?
Let you know I'm back in again. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries, no worries. I just mentioned that you and I were going to be at reInvent. So they were in the neighborhood, asking them to stop on by.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, again, so we'll look forward to seeing folks out there, and again, starting to do things together in a physical location. So really looking forward to that. This has been kind of tough. Anyway, so game plan here. We are going to talk about the Cloud SIEM data pipeline, how the data gets ingested into Sumo, how it goes through the various processes. And then, of course, we're going to log in and see Cloud SIEM in action. We're going to look and see the interface, look at the UI, kind of get our feet wet walking around it, that sort of thing. Then we're really going to focus on insights, and insights are kind of the heart of things. So you'll find that an insight is a collection of signals that are joined together by some entity. Could be a host name, could be an IP address, whatever. And it's really trying to tell us a story of something that we need to pay attention to. Okay. Again, this Cloud SIEM is based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And so we'll have a lab to investigate an insight and play around with an insight here a little bit. Then we're going to get into customizing and tuning the Cloud SIEM, talk a little bit about creating rule tuning, creating custom rules, as well as custom insights. And then we get to go take an exam. So that is the game plan. And like I said, I expect to be done here in about an hour and 56 minutes with lecture and lab. And so we can go on our merry way. Again, promotion here about the Uber Eats. So if you take the certification exam today and pass it, again, send an email to training@sumologic.com with a copy of your certificate, and we will gladly send you a $15 Uber Eats voucher. Now, that and this Sumo 6 thing, I need to qualify something, because I assumed, because this was a U.S. East Coast regional Cert Jam, that most of you are from the U.S., and that would turn out to be somewhat false. So for folks who are in other countries, we have a hard time shipping things to those other countries. There's not so much shipping them, although the cost is crazy, but even more importantly, you got to pay duty on those things. And so that's the issue, is we don't want to stick somebody for a bill for duty on something that they won. And so it is something that we're looking into in other parts of the world. Okay. We can ship to the US and Canada fairly easily, fairly inexpensively, but shipping to other parts of the world gets expensive. And we're looking at perhaps having our swag manufactured in other places and the things, but I don't have a solution yet. Something we're working on. Okay. So I just wanted to be clear about that and be precise. Now, let's talk about Cloud SIEM. So Cloud SIEM is, again, our cloud-based information and event management system. And like it said, it's going to show us information, areas of information with regards to our security footprint, where maybe we've got some challenges and things we need to investigate and that sort of thing. It also provides an event management system to where we can mark an insight, something we want to investigate. It's in progress. Maybe we send it out to our our SWAT team, all kinds of things. And a lot of that stuff can be customized to help you out. But it's an enterprise grade platform that helps you make data-driven decisions and investigate security and operational issues. Pure and simple. It is a great, I think you're going to find it to be a very powerful and great security tool to add to your arsenal. Okay. So what happens here? How does data get in here and what does it do? Okay. Well, the data comes in just like it does to anything else in Sumo. So in Sumo Logic, we have collectors. They're either hosted collectors or they're installed collectors. And those collectors bring in data here through our collection process. We're going to take that information. We're going to ingest that information in. So that's traditional Sumo collection process. And we then generate messages. So we basically bring in the messages from CloudTrail and all kinds of other different sources that we want to. Now, once we get those messages, what we want to do is we want to parse out the individual fields from those log messages. So this product does this automatically. It parses out those fields. Maybe it parses out the IP address. It parses out the host name. It parses out something that it recognizes for a security incident, stuff like that. And then we're going to map them to specific metadata fields that we use in the product. Now, this is all done inside of this CSE. We call it Cloud SIEM Enterprise, is how we abbreviate it. This happens within the Cloud SIEM Enterprise product itself. And then we're going to enrich it. What we mean by enrich it is we're going to take those IP addresses, we're going to look them up to CrowdStrike, see if there's any threat intel. So this generates something which we call records. So we've taken the messages that you normally have in Sumo, and we've now converted them to records. And then we get down here and we're going to go through a series of rules. Now, we've got several hundred built-in rules right now based off the MITRE ATT&CK framework. You know, somebody logs in from suspicious locations. Somebody logs in from 2 different locations that can't get there from here, type thing. You know, impossible travel. A known file hash issue where we know that there's been a virus associated with this file or something. Lots and lots, several hundred of these rules exist. We maintain those rules for you. And so as MITRE ATT&CK framework comes up with new rules, we'll add them and update your rules. We update them at least every 2 weeks. If there's something that urgently comes out, we'll do it sooner and quicker. Bottom line is we maintain those rules for you. Now, you can also create your own rules if you want to. And I'll get into that later on in this course. But basically, when we read the record and we read these metadata tags and metadata fields, if we find that one of your records coming in matches one of the rules, and the rules are where we see issues, problems, maybe it's a file hash, a virus type thing, you know, whatever. Bottom line is we're going to then parse out the entity of that, and we're also going to give it a severity score, and that generates a signal. Now, we're going to take those signals and we're going to correlate them by entity. So we're going to take, by host name, by IP address, by, whatever. It could be AWS region if we want to. We can correlate them. And when we have a certain number of signals with their severity score, and it adds up greater than 12 over a 2-week period of time, that generates something called an insight. And that insight then is displayed for you and for me. And that insight is something that we can troubleshoot. We can investigate. We can see what's going on. So, as I said, you're typically getting these records in, and that these records match some specific rules that we have. It will then parse out the entity and generate a signal. Again, we're going to take those signals, we're going to correlate them based on entity. And if the number of signals, the score of those signals is greater than 12, greater than or equal to 12, over a 2-week period of time, we will then fire off an insight. And this is something then that you and I can troubleshoot. Okay. So again, if I'm taking Sumo Logic Coffee or Sumo Logic Travel Logic or like that, again, I typically take your logs, I bring them in, I process them. Here is where some of the magic starts to happen. So once I get these messages, I start to parse out the individual fields, map them to our metadata, and enhance and enrich those fields as well. So again, here I say, I see, for example, here I have an SSO, I have an IP address, but it doesn't look like an IP address. It's got dashes in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that IP address out. We're going to parse it out. We're going to convert it to a real IP address. We're going to map it to a metadata tag, which in this case is source device IP. And then, of course, we can also do an enrichment on it, check it out with CrowdStrike, and see what the threat level is. By the way, one thing I do want to make you aware of, and that is, if CrowdStrike recognizes that there's a low threat to something, doesn't mean there's no threat to it. It's a low threat. They know about it. The threat level is low, though. So you need to be cognizant of the difference between no information and a low threat level. Okay? Threat level is still something you have to concern yourself with, something you have to think about. Now, then we get to the records. And again, we're going to go through our several hundred rules. And based on those rules, if we have some record that matches those rules, we will then strip out the entity and generate that signal. So rules, again, are based on our MITRE attack information that we have, and they will provide a severity score. So if this incident occurs, for example, maybe a user failed to log in, that'd be a very low severity score. It happens all the time. But if enough of those things happen, then that might cause us something to concern ourselves with. By the same token, if I get a phishing email, that's going to have a higher severity score. So these severity scores, and again, they can be adjusted, but these severity scores typically come from the MITRE attack framework, and they come with severity scores that pretty much make a lot of sense. And then, like I said, if we find a record that matches our rule, then we will also extract out the entity. And the entity is, like I said, the IP address, the host name, something that typically identifies the who or the what. So, and like I said, we're going to track our signals by those entities. And then, of course, we're going to correlate by entity our signals together. And if, like I said, the numeric score of the signals together is greater than 12 or greater than equal to 12 over a 2-week period of time, that's going to generate an insight. Now, in a few minutes, we'll actually log in here and play around and see and all that stuff. But here is the heads-up display. And this heads-up display was designed by gamers, specifically the World of Warcraft gamers, because we wanted to avoid fatigue. And so what you'll see here on this radar screen, and this radar screen reflects time. So here is my current time, and you'll find there's a switch. I'll show you later how much time you want to go back. Usually it's 24 hours. And so I would go back here to the previous 24 hours. Now, this blue wave that you see here that I'm kind of etching across, those are the individual records. From those records, we generate signals. That's what these medium blue colored columns are. And then from these signals, we generate and look for correlation of insights. So these red triangles are the insights that you probably want to investigate. Now, you could look at records, you could look at signals, you could look at other things, but generally the insights is what's going to get you going here with regards to looking around and seeing things. So what we want to do is we want you to log into our training environment using the same account information you used before. So for those of you who did not log in this morning, what we want you to do is fire up a new Google Chrome or Firefox browser. And we'd like you to go to service.sumologic.com. Then I'd like you to pick a 3-digit number anywhere from 001 to 250. So you could pick 220, you could pick 113, whatever. I'd prefer you to standard 250 though. And if you want to type that in the chat box, you can. Most of you did that already this morning. But I want you to log in then as training plus analyst with that 3-digit number at sumologic.com for your email. And the current password is a capital SECURITY, numeral 2, numeral 1, exclamation mark. And so this is how you are going to log in. And if you don't mind, I'm going to take this lovely information and I am going to put it into the chat box because it might be easier for you to copy. Okay. Yeah, Kevin grabbed 404. I'd like you to standard 250. The reason, by the way, is that we're also doing some customer training right now. So we've split out the range of numbers here. Okay. So you're going to, again, let me just go ahead and stop the slides actually for a second. Let me go ahead and go through the login exercise. So if you go to service.sumologic.com, it will take you here. And then you can log in as training plus analyst with that 3-digit number. Maybe I'll grab 15 at sumologic.com. It's got to be an email address. And all our email addresses here and in sumologic.com. Then the password is capital SECURITY. Helps if I actually hit the right characters. Just checking to see if you're paying attention, folks. Numeral 2 and numeral 1 exclamation mark. There you go. And that should then log you in. Now, when you get logged in and you're here in the Sumo Logic environment, what we want you to do is here in the main menu. So if this main menu is not open, open it up by clicking up here where it says Sumo Logic or this hamburger menu, whatever. If you click where it says Cloud SIEM Enterprise, this will take you to this Cloud SIEM product. And here is where we can go and see and play and all of that good stuff. And this is what we're going to explore. Now, also to make things a little easier for you, if that's possible, I am going to upload a PDF document for you. So if you'll bear with me here just a second, I am going to upload this lovely document. And actually, let me go ahead and open up this document and give me a second, folks. Bear with me a moment. You can now should be able to download that document unless your company has restricted your ability to download documents. Now, let me stop my screen. I need to share not only my web browser, I really need to share my desktop. So hopefully you guys are all logged into the Sumo Logic environment. And also you have this lab guide. And what I'd like you to do is if you're logged in and you got the lab guide, please raise your hand in the participants panel so I know that you're all in and ready to go. And I see I've got some folks that just joined us. Let me make sure you can talk. So your microphones are now enabled. So out of 16 folks, I got 6 people ready to roll. Okay. Hopefully we can do a little better than that, but I realize that
Hey, is there a URL where I could get this PDF?
I'm sorry?
Any links where I could get this PDF? I cannot download it from Sumo.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, there's for those of you who cannot download it, what we can do is you can go out here to, and I'll actually give you the link here in just a second, support.sumologic.com. And I'm going to go to community and I'm going to search for slides. So here, if you go to our, sorry, not doing a post. There we go. Here, ladies and gentlemen, this link, which I will put in the chat box, is where you can get our slides, our lab guides, and everything else associated with this. So if you go here, and I just posted it up in the chat box, so if you click on that link and you scroll down here to the new Cloud SIEM fundamental certification, and where it says labs, this should let you get that lab guide. So, Jamie, I hope that answers your question, and I hope it answers it for everybody else.
Yeah, it's asking me to sign up with Facebook or Google.
I'm sorry?
He's asking me to sign up to be able to download the file.
Yeah, yeah. But you should be able to go here, and then you should be able to click on it, and it should, hold on a second, that's the slides.
Like if I click on download.
Okay. Yeah, click on download. Yeah, you can download this. When download,
it's asking me to log in to sign up.
It wants to download through LinkedIn. So we just want to keep track of who's got this stuff. That's all. But you should be able to download it through your LinkedIn or Facebook, Google. Interesting. Okay. All right. Yes, it's not ideal. So the other thing you can do is if you want, you can send me your email or put it in the chat, and then myself or hopefully Scott can do this. He'll just email it to you. Okay. He'll just email it to you. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to go through this anyway. So I'm going to walk you all through this stuff. And everything else. So, okay, so we got a bunch of people with their hands up. It's like we're all set and all logged in. Now, more importantly, if you can't access this, if you can't log in, if there's a problem, let Scott or myself know so that we can help you. Okay. Yeah, Kevin mentions that the web version of Zoom prevents you from sharing. If you have a thick client, that allows you to download. And although, honestly, Kevin, there are some companies that have restricted the thick client as well, so you can't download. So I understand. But hopefully you guys are all in, and let me go back in here because it looked like I popped myself out. Service.sumologic.com. And again, I'm going to log in as me. So let me log out here. Let me go back in here and log in with my account. And again, this is an open system that you guys can go back and do these labs with and do these exercises and all that stuff. Now, if your company does not have the Cloud SIEM Enterprise link on your environment, after today's class and you see what this has to offer, you may want to talk to your folks about getting it. Okay. But right now we're in the training environment, we click on Cloud SIEM Enterprise and we see this homepage. So first thing I want to do is I want to walk you through the homepage. But I want to make sure everybody, there's no, nobody's having a problem logging in, there's no problems, that sort of thing. So if you got problems, let me know. And if I don't hear anything in 30 seconds, I'm going to move forward.
We cue the Jeopardy theme song.
No, I'm going songless. All right. Sounds like everybody's in good shape. So we are all here. Now, if I look over here to my left, it says our environment's online. It's ready to go. Earlier, I had mentioned that you can specify a time range of information that you want to see. Here is that time range, and by default, it's 24 hours, okay? But you could change it to some other time range if you want, and that means the information you're seeing here reflects that time range, as well as this Insight Radar reflects that time range. Now, I'm going to go back to 24 hours because that's typically what we use in this class. Now, in 24 hours, we have received over 634,000 records. And if you look here, a little down arrow and a little percentage, that compared to the previous 24 hours, it's down a little bit, okay? And we generated about 3,000 signals. And again, looking at the last 24 hours, that's down a little bit too. And we currently have 3 insights. So in the last 24 hours, we have generated all of this information. Now, I also have some metrics that I can put my cursor on the eye next to the insight metrics. And it tells me what these metrics are, the detection time, response time, and all that stuff. So I can see how things are behaving within my team. What's my response time? Are people getting on these things or not? And then I can see my response by status, my insights by status. So I got 3 brand new ones. Nothing's been moved to in progress. Nothing's been moved to custom. Nothing's been moved to closed. And again, you can add other statuses if you want to the product. But we're going to get in there. We'll play around and move some stuff in a little bit. The other thing is over the 24-hour time frame, this timeline is my 24 hours. I can see when my insights were generated, just so I have an idea of when they were. Now, as I said, over here is my all-seeing eye or my Insight Radar. The outer circle is, again, all my records. This blue, light blue area is my signals. And then I can see where my insights are coming from. Okay, so I can put my cursors over that, but we'll get into more detail in just a little bit. Over to the right, this is the latest insight we got. It's insight number 547. We always number our insights to help keep track. This is based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. This is exfiltration and command and control. And I can see the entity it's associated with is username Rico Dynamite. And sounds pretty ominous to me, but we'll get there. And then here I see a period across my time, across my x-axis, and severity scores across my y-axis. And I can see that this insight was generated over the last 13 days. There are 5 signals that make this up. It's got a severity score of high, means it's probably pretty important. And we could click on this, but we're not going to. There's other ways we can get there. And then down below here, I kind of have a syslog. And this syslog shows me who has been operating, modifying insights, doing things in this tool. So if somebody closes up an insight, I can see what user it was that did that. So this is kind of like my syslog. Now, up here, I could search by a specific insight if I want to, and you'll notice the thing automatically refreshes itself every so often. Actually, let me go back to my home screen. I could search by insight signals, and we'll see that. We'll play with that a little bit later. I can look at all of my insights here. And again, I could filter by a specific insight. Its name, its ID, its whatever. But by default, it shows me my insights in kind of descending order. And so I could search for an insight here. Again, these insights are a collection of signals that kind of tell me a story. I could also look, if I wanted to, by signal. So I can see what kind of signals I am generating to see if I'm getting a lot of the same type of signal. And it looks like somebody's been playing around here with regards to generating some signals. And then I can also look by entities. So maybe I want to look at, what entities I might have that might be generating a lot of scores. So again, some username, some IP, some host name, that sort of thing. And then if I wanted to, I could actually look at my records. And typically in the admin courses, we show you where you can see your records to make sure that your records are coming in here properly and been parsed properly and all that good stuff. So we talk about the record stuff more on the admin class than we do on this fundamentals class. And then here under content, you will see based on your privileges. Now, when you click on content, you only see rules, rule tuning, and custom insights. I see a whole bunch of things because I have an elevated privilege. The privileges that you set to be able to see these permissions are actually something that you set inside of the Sumo logic regular interface. So let me just take a step back. This grid over here, this grid switches me back to my continuous intelligence platform, or back to Sumo logic, as you and I know that. Here inside of Sumo logic, if you're an administrator, and you guys are not, by the way, I could go into users and roles. And when I create a new role for my security folks, I can define what permissions they have with regards to my Cloud SIEM environment, what different things they can do, what different content, what different configuration settings that they might be enabled. And we gave you guys just enough to be an analyst here. Okay. And this is all done inside the CIP portion, of the Core Intelligence Platform, is what CIP stands for. It is not done in the CSE or the Cloud SIEM Enterprise product. Those are your solutions. Now, over here, there's some configuration things that your administrator may do. And here's where you can control and add other things. Right here where the help is. And you notice I've got a little red bang on that help. If I click on that, here's where I can access my documentation or my API documentation if you want to do something programmatic. You'll also find here that under announcements, that if I click on announcements, I will see all the new updates that we provide. So when Sumo Logic updates your rules and all stuff, you can see what we're doing. And when we do an update to it, we'll give you that little red dot to indicate that something's changed, and you can check that out. Okay. And then, as I said, this icon takes us back into the core Sumo product. And last but not least, this one over here on the far right shows me who I am logged in as. Okay. So let me go back. And by the way, this button over here takes us to our homepage inside of here. Now, so that's a little bit into the interface. And I think it's fine. It's pretty straightforward, pretty, nothing too fancy there. So in lab 0, you were logged in, right, in the PDF. And then in lab 1, we wanted to explore the HUD, and we played around and poked around here a little bit. We're going to poke around, obviously, a lot more. So We'll see some of the stuff as we go through. There are some tips and tricks into this document as well. But what we want to do is we're going to go jump ahead here to lab 2. And we want to investigate an insight. Okay. So we're going to go in here and look at an insight. Now, you're going to find that in this scenario here, we've got kind of 3 different categories of insights. So we're basically set up 3 fictitious companies. Financial Logic, and the Financial Logic has big investors. And because they are European investors, we have to make sure that we support and regulate based on GDPR. Okay. Protecting people's privacy and data the European way, which has much higher and stringent standards than we have anything in the United States. We also have a fictitious company here called Sumo Pharma, which of course is worried about good old HIPAA and data privacy. And last but not least, we also have Sumo Coffee, which again provides coffee, but it's going to use PCI compliance, so we pay with a credit card, we've got to encrypt that data and secure that data. So those are our different use cases. And you're going to find that in our case that we're going to have 3 different labs in our PDFs. There's going to be an A version of the lab, there's going to be a B version of the lab, and there's going to be a C version of the lab. So I'm going to walk you through one of these labs, and then I'm going to turn you loose on a different one of these labs. So maybe we'll do 2A together, and then we'll do, I'll have you do 2B or 2C on your own, but just bear with me a second. Now, what's going to happen here is that in threat investigation, we are going to obviously detect and monitor, right? We're going to see this new insight, see something that we need to focus on, and then we're going to investigate. And we're going to look at the signals that make up this insight. We're going to try to understand what's going on, try to tell the story it's trying to tell us. We're going to test and develop on hypotheses and what we think is happening. And we're going to test that hypothesis. And we're going to basically figure out what is going on here. And then obviously our goal here is to take action and respond. Maybe we have to quarantine the machines. Maybe we have to tell users to change their password. Maybe we have to, talk to some folks and find out what are they doing. I got a phishing email. How the heck did you get that phishing email? Was it something that was sent to you or something sent to everybody? Or, oh, well, I went to that website you told me not to go to and I clicked on it. People do the darndest things. And so we're also going to document what happens. We're going to add comments to our insight. So what I want to do here, like I said, in lab 2 is I want to focus on an insight. And so we're going to take this and talk about this in the day of a life of a SOC analyst using this tool, right? So they're going to see a new insight. And like I said, they're going to check into that insight. They're going to look at the signals that make up that insight. Necessary, look at the raw logs that make up the insight. But what is that telling me? What story is going on here? And we'll see that. Then again, we're going to develop a hypothesis of what we think happens. And we're going to record that in the comments. And I'll show you where the comments are. Document that. And then we're going to tell it what actions to take. Maybe we want to email our SOC team, or maybe we want to email our network administration team, or maybe we want to add something to add a JIRA ticket, whatever. These actions can also be customizable. Your administrator can add actions to this as well. And then finally, we're going to set the update status to in progress or closed, and we're going to move on to the next insight. So this is typically the day in the life of a SOC analyst. And by the way, this makes a great test question. So, what's the next thing after hypotheses and stuff like that? So just want to make sure you're aware of this. Again, all of our rules that we have are based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. This is a standard framework that exists out there. Adversarial tactics and techniques and common knowledge, where the attack word comes from, by MITRE. And again, you'll find they're broken up into different categories: initial access, execution, persistence, all kinds of different things. So again, we use this as our framework in this product. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want us to, we're going to search for an insight with a specific name: persistence with initial access. So I'm going to go into the Sumo Logic Cloud SIEM environment. I'm going to go to insights. And again, I've got a whole bunch of insights here. Okay. Notice it's not showing me any insights that were closed. We filter those out. I can remove this so I can see the ones that are closed, but we'll let it go for right now. So what I want to see here is I want to filter by my name. So I'm going to say name. I could say is, or I can say contains, whatever. And I can say something like persistence with initial. And what surprises me is I'm not seeing things show up yet. Bear with me a second. Let me just change this to contains. There we go. So persistence with execution and initial access, and persistence with initial access. This is the one I want. So I can select that, and now it's going to filter my insights for that specific insight. And you'll notice that this insight has happened a couple of times, right? It's happened here at 10:25, at 11:15, happened on the 23rd, happened on the 22nd. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at this particular insight. So it says I got 4 unique signals, last seen 14 hours ago, or this one last seen 3 days ago, but I'm going to pick this latest one.
Hey guys, just a quick one on this insight and the number. There's nothing unique to the insight itself. There's just sequential. So when we say insight 545, if you're in the same organization, that will always be 545. So if you're sharing it with a teammate, fine, no problem at all. But if you go from here to another organization with its own Cloud SIEM, the numbers are not going to line up. Insight number is just a unique identifier for the insight for that company organization itself.
Thanks, Scott. Yep. So as Scott mentioned, this is just a reference for this particular insight. Everything's stamped with a number. So we're going to grab, and by the way, does everybody see insight 545? I assume there's no problem with that. And what I want you to do is I want you to click on it. And this opens up our insight. So this is opening up our insight, and over here to the left, you'll see that here's my insight. You'll notice there's this funny little box next to it with 6 little boxes in it. If I click on this box, this is my context action button. And you'll find that we've got this context action button all over the place. From here, I can do other things. If I go down here, for example, this entity, I have another context action button. And if I click on this context action button, if I get right there on it, okay, you'll see that I can do a lookup on this IP address. I can do a who is on this IP address. I can even send it back to Sumo Logic Search and see what other systems this system is accessing besides my security systems. Okay, I can do a who is lookup. So all kinds of neat things. And again, that can be customized. So here's my insight. Here is the entity IP that binds this insight together. I have 4 unique signals. Here's its severity score, its relative weight. Here's my event time. Here's how long it took for all of my various events or signals that made that happen. And here's my MITRE ATT&CK framework. And then at the very bottom, here's where I can add my comments. So as I troubleshoot this and I hypothesize about this and all that, here's where I put my comments as far as what's going on. Now, one other thing I can do is I can also assign this to somebody, assign this to one of my teammates if I want to. I can also change its status. Since we're investigating this, I could mark this in progress if I want to. Okay. Now, over here, across the top, I have a timeline. So here I have the first event, the first signal that happened. And then later on in time, I see there are other signals of what happened. And they're stacked up here on a y-axis, which indicates the relative threat score, if you will. The higher the object is, the higher the score. So the first thing that happened here is I have a threat intel, a device IP matched a threat intel file hash. That's what this signal is. This signal has a score of 3. And if I click to open up this signal, before I do that though, again, it tells me where the device host name is and whose IP address it found this file on. And here is the name of the file, and this file matches a known threat. But I can go in here and I can see more. So I can click on that particular signal if I want to, and I can see more about this. A record flagged a file hash from a known threat, basically. And so again, when did it occur? What's going on here? Again, I've got my little context things I can check out down here. I can see, again, my device host name, my threat name, all that fun stuff. Again, I can see my host name, my domain controller here, and I can see various information about this, right? Again, the file name, its threat hash, the actual hash itself. An antivirus scan resulted in the detection of this. So, and I can see who the user was that this happened on. And again, there's a bunch of different metadata tags that is added in here to help me understand this investigation. And all of these metadata tags, for example, you have a context explorer that I can investigate. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at, I think this one, I'll just do this one real quick. And I can go and say, look, I want to see information about this file hash. And it can then show me information about that particular file hash and how prevalent it is or what's happening. And again, it's looking at the actual records. Okay. So I can see, is this something that's happened, throughout my organization or where it's happening, that sort of thing. All right. So here, basically what it's trying to tell me is, look, we found, antivirus software found a file that has a known threaded file hash. Okay. So that's what this signal is telling me. Now, if I want to, I could, of course, go back to my signals and go to the next one. Or on my graph up here, I can click on this icon and it will take me to my next signal. Now, in this next signal, I've got a proof point TAP system. And it says a user receives an email with a phishing link. Oh, this is good. This is good. So a user gets a phishing link. Again, it's got a severity score of 4. And again, I can see the entity IP address, the same IP address that joins us all together. And so again, I can look at this email and again, the action click permitted, and here's the URL it's taking me to. And again, I can look this up as far as a known threat. Again, I can see all these nice metadata tags. So it started off with a file hash issue. Then it's showing me a phishing link issue that resulted from that. Then I can click on the next signal and I can see that a checkpoint threat emulation malicious file was allowed. So somebody clicked on the phishing link and brought in a file that they weren't supposed to. And if I want to, I can, and again, I can see more information about this and look this stuff up. And then I can go to the fourth and final signal, which is a detection summary event. So CrowdStrike detected that this file is exhibiting signs of being active. And so this file is trying to do something. Okay. So I have a pretty good idea of what happened, right? I got a phishing link with a malicious file. And now that file is trying to spawn and go to other things. So my hypothesis is probably what I want to do is I want to isolate that machine. I want to make sure it gets cleaned up. I want that file removed. And I probably want to talk to that individual, that user, about making sure they watch where they click. In fact, maybe I want to send an email to a lot of the folks in my organization, reminding them to watch where they click. This is always a training opportunity in my mind. Now, if I want to go back here to my signals, like I said, I can click on signals. And again, it shows me my 4 signals that made this up. One other thing I want to mention to you about these signals, each of these signals has a score, how serious this is. So here we have a value of 3. Here we have 4, 3 plus 4 is 7. I have another 3, 7 plus 3 is 10. plus 5 is 15. That's greater than 12. If these signals add up and are greater than 12, greater than or equal to 12, excuse me, over a 2-week period, that's what generates my insight. So my insight is looking at these by entity, a bunch of signals, and how serious are they. If they're greater than or equal to 12 in a 2-week period, we generate an insight. And that's how this whole thing works. Now I got a question for you all. In your company, do you have A, such a tool? And B, how long would it take you to do something like this? Something to think about. You don't have to share. But as you can see, I can quickly see the whole process of what happened. And I can easily take action here. So again, I could assign this to my desktop support team, or better yet, under actions here, maybe I want to send it to my desktop support team or write a Jira ticket or whatever I want to do so that we get this issue resolved. Right. Jamie points out, likely it will take a while to get all this put together. In this case, in this Sumo Logic product, we start receiving all these logs. It starts correlating this stuff right off the get-go. So I'm not saying it happens instantaneously, Jamie, but I will say once you implement the system, it will happen in probably a day or two. And then from that point forward, you'll have all kinds of interesting stories. Depends how active you are. It depends how, how people may want to treat you as a threat. In fact, that brings me to a slide here that I'm going to show you. So we did a customer of ours did a 45-day evaluation, okay? And they ingested during this 45-day eval about 10 billion records, which generated about 9.8 million signals. Of that 9.8 million signals, it generated 175 insights. Now, of that 175 insights, we investigated all of them. 95 were no action required. It was just an FYI, somebody logged out, log in, that sort of thing. We found there were 15 positives, and we can create our own rules and adjust things to avoid those false positives. But there were 65 instances that needed to be processed, just like I showed you here, where we got to go out to that user and go out to that machine and do a virus clean on it and talk to them and all that good stuff. And so again, it is a very powerful tool that makes it, in my mind, very easy for you and I and others to be able to be proactive on ensuring your security. I'm going to assume that every one of you work for a company that has a fiduciary duty to protect your customers' data, your company's data, and your reputations and all that stuff. So I assume this thing is probably important to you all. Okay.
So if you go back to that chart real quick.
Yep.
So I just want to make sure everybody understands. So where it's that line between insights and no action required, right? See that line?
Yep.
That is where a human being starts getting involved, right? So all the stuff we've been talking about from that line up is all automatic by Sumo with out-of-the-box insights and out-of-the-box evaluations, right? So when, Jamie, when you made a comment about how long does this take, it's not like, because there's some solutions out there, you have to train it, and there's unlearned and learned, or unsupervised and supervised machine learning and all kind of fun stuff. You don't need to worry about with this. All right. So the line in your head you got to think about is, as soon as the insights are done, which is automatic, that's where you start to interact with the product. There's no training and all that kind of fun stuff that some other solutions have. That's what I make sure that was clear.
Thank you, Scott. One other thing I want to add to Scott's point is that we are now adding to this solution a Cloud SOAR product. So that SOAR product allows you to automate your responses and activities and things along those lines. So that hopefully it'll help you remediate through the stuff faster. And again, a very powerful thing to be aware of. So Kevin asked a question: in the AI machine learning assist in the no action required, or is that human led? In this case, I believe it was all human led, but you can obviously start to automate that. Typically, whenever I get something new that I haven't seen before, I want a human being to investigate that. And then if I start seeing it again consistently, I might automate it around it. There is some machine learning where we can modify the rules and stuff so that we won't see it, we won't detect it. But I don't want to create those rules and stuff until we know exactly what's going on. Does that make sense? So there is some machine learning and stuff that you can do to minimize that.
I think we might have lost your audio there, John. You're muted.
I'm muted, son of a gun. Sorry about that, folks. When did I go muted? What was the last thing you guys heard?
Before you went to the PDF,
I'm sorry?
before you jump into the PDF.
Okay, good. All right. So basically what I'm trying to do here, what I want you to do is I want you all to go to lab 2. We did 2A together, and in 2A together, again, we investigated this persistence with initial access. And we discovered here that a phishing link was received and it generated a malicious file and all that fun stuff. So we figured it all out. What I'd like you to do is actually, let me, let me go ahead and have you guys do 2C. So in 2C, I want you to look for an insight, exfiltration with command and control. So bear with me a second, I'm gonna copy this. And let me go in here to our Sumo environment. Let me go into insights. By the way, something else I want to point out to you. When I look at my insights, there's 2 ways to look at these. Come on. There we go. I can look at a laundry list of my insights, or I can also look at them by in progress or their status, that sort of thing. I can see their status. And if I want to, I can move them from one status to another. So 2 different ways of seeing this. Just wanted to make you aware of it. Now, what I want to do and what I want you to do is I want you to do lab 2C, where the name contains command and control. And actually, let me put a come on. I believe it was, bear with me a second. I didn't get a good exfiltration with command and control. There we go. Exfiltration with command and control. And so when I look at this particular insight, there is insight 547. And so I want you all to look at insight number 547 on this environment. And I want you to tell me what the story is. Look at the signals, investigate this. I'm going to give you about, 5 minutes to check it out, and then we'll talk about it. Okay. Sorry about the putting myself on mute. Like I said, go ahead and take a look, and we'll talk in about 5 minutes at about 2 o'clock East Coast time. Thanks. Okay, folks, 5 minutes is up. Who wants to tell me what you found? Any takers?
Yeah, it seemed like the user was terminated and they were using those credentials.
Okay, good. So here on 1013, right, we had an unauthorized access. Somebody in their AWS account, the IAM user account, it looks like they were, trying to access this. And again, it tells you here basically what's going on. And then as we go to the next signal, we have a threat intel match, an AWS API call. And again, this user, the entity is Rico Dynamite, but we try to make it sound suspicious. So that's why we used Rico Dynamite. Something's going to blow something up. But you can see that, again, looks like somebody, the action to stop logging was turned on using an AWS API call. And so again, something suspicious. So they tried to stop logging. And then the next thing you just said, they tried to log into AWS API from a terminated Active Directory account. So as you said, somebody's trying to do something here that shouldn't happen. And then I go into the next one, and now it says an instance credential exfiltration. So somebody's trying to export out somebody's credentials here. Again, it's something that shouldn't happen. So we can see what fields and stuff that we extracted out. And, the fact this is an instance credential exfiltration somebody's trying to use. And so again, not a good thing to have happen. Now, again, we bring in AWS guard duty logs, various other logs into Sumo logic, and it all generates this stuff based on the existing rules, based on the stuff that's in Sumo logic, based on this, Cloud SIEM enterprise solution. So there's really nothing that you have to do other than now you've got something here to investigate it. And by the way, as far as investigation, what would you do? How would you approach this? Who might you want to talk to? Maybe Rico, this username Rico Dynamite, and see what's going on. What are they trying to do and all that sort of thing. Okay.
Where can we see that terminated account though? Because one of them is
right. One of them is a terminated account. You're
from a terminated account. Where do we see that? And which account is it?
Yep. Let's go take a look. Let me go back to that particular account. This is the terminated. This is the API's call from a terminated Active Directory account. Let me find here real quick.
I was under the impression that the terminated account was Rico Dynamite.
I'm sorry, you're under the impression of what?
I was under the impression that Rico Dynamite was the terminated account.
And I'm not sure. Scott, you want to weigh in here?
It'd be depending on the details coming out of guard duty. So
Right.
If somebody's trying to use a terminated account, guard duty is going to light that up. So they've been trying to get in there with Rico.
Right. But Rico is not the terminated account, correct?
I do not believe so, no.
Yeah, I don't believe so either. So, but they were to try to. Now, usually when the account is terminated, the only thing you really have is probably at most their identification number. But I'm not sure if that identification number is nixed when an account is terminated. So that's why I'm not seeing. I'm expecting to see either an ID or some username here, but I don't know if I forgot if AWS, when you terminate an account, if AWS flat out removes it or not. That's maybe why we're not seeing that information. Okay. But yeah, you came to the right conclusion. And again, what action, well, we want to talk to our AWS administrator, talk to Rico, see what's happening, that sort of thing. All right. So hopefully, though, you're starting to see the power and the functionality of this. Like I said, this issue was AWS. The previous issue was, email and phishing and stuff like that, Active Directory accounts. The more logs and sources you have coming in here, the more different places it can help you identify problems and threats and all that good stuff. So that takes care of lab 2A, B, and C. What we want to do next is we want to continue the investigation in lab 3. So in lab 3, you may recall I did 2A. So I'm going to continue lab 3A. And so I'm going to go back and look at my persistence with initial access. So back here to my insights. And again, I'm going to look for a name contains persistence with initial access. And we just want to show you some additional stuff that you can do. So I think this is the one we were playing with here, 545. But if I open up this 545 insight, one of the things that I can do is, again, here's my entity IP address. And in my entity IP address, I have this context action button. And if I click on that, one of the cool things I can do is I can now do a search in the Sumo logic space. And I can see where this IP address has been used around our environment. So here I can write a query, or maybe what I want to do is maybe I want to do account by underscore source category. And I can see all the different sources where this IP address is trying to go around. Now, I mean, I agree 192.168 is normally a private IP address, so you got to use that with a little bit of grain of salt. But you can see very quickly how I can go back and I can look within the Cloud SIEM environment and search back into the overall Sumo environment and see across all of my different systems by running a simple log query there as far as what's happening, what activity is happening, okay? Additionally, if I want to, I can even create a query like this. Remember, we talked about these queries that we can create in Sumo, security queries, and here's another one. But let me put the IP address here. 192.168. 38.102. That 38.102. And what didn't it like? Oh, okay. Apparently it didn't like my, okay. Sometimes when it gets these quotes, it brings in smart quotes, which are which obviously is a formatting thing from a PDF document generation tool. So let me make sure these are regular quotes. And so again, I'm looking here. Oops, no data. And I feel I have a problem with
You had your time scale at 15 minutes and
oh,
time
yeah.
1 hour.
Thank you. Silly me. Thank you. All right. So now I can start seeing the activity. And if I uncomment out the rest of this stuff here, I can see again by metadata vendor, by product, stuff like that, what this IP address is doing. So get a sense for what's happening here, broken up by my time. Again, here they're on CrowdStrike. Here they are in Microsoft Windows. Here they are in Proofpoint attack. I can see, you know, where they are as far as what systems and stuff they're touching and all that sort of thing. So it's like I said, it's really, really handy. You can take things more than just what you see inside of the HUD. You can bring it back, like I said, out to Sumo. You can also, if you want to, like I said, do a who is on it, all kinds of powerful things that you and I can do. There is more than meets the eye. Now, that being said, what I'd like to do here is I'd like to move ahead to page 14, correction, page 15 of your PDF. And again, you'll see there's a lab here, lab 3C. You guys did lab 2C with the Sumo coffee. We're going to do lab 3C here. And we're going to look at what, you know, Rico Dynamite and stuff is doing. And again, you want to make sure that you change this username to Rico Dynamite. And you're probably going to need to replace the double quotes inside of here because they're going to become, you know, they're not normal text quotes, they're the fancy quotes. And so you may have to retype those things over. But again, you can get a sense for what this information can tell you. And so I'm going to give you about 5 minutes here to do that. And then, by the way, we're going to take a break. Okay. So we'll do 5 minutes. You show me what you learned, and we'll take a 10-minute break. Okay. So I'm going to be quiet and let you guys do your thing. Thank you.
Kevin, You don't have access, I don't think, from a class point of view for the ID, but you can create your own groupings. So spec ops or tier 3 analyst teams, you can create your own. And with the most recent release, which I don't know if it's in the class material, the class instance, you can actually reorganize those. You can drag them around for whatever order you want them to show. So you can create your own groups.
Okay, folks, I think you've had about 5 minutes to play. So in lab 3C, like I said, you really looked up Rico Dynamite and you tried to find out, a little bit more here about Rico Dynamite. And you can see by looking at the various logs and looking at usernames, you can see maybe where Rico Dynamite was and what Rico Dynamite maybe was accessing, what systems they were logging into and that sort of thing. So again, the goal of this exercise is just to take you through this stuff. Now, good news, by the way, after we take a break, we're going to talk about creating a rule tuning expression, create a rule, and create an insight. And then that's pretty much going to wrap up the course. So what do you say here, folks? We take about a 10-minute break. And then after that 10-minute break, we will finish this class up. So here is the 10-minute timer, if you would. When it gets down to 0, why don't you come on back? But for right now, take a break, and we'll see you back here in about 9 minutes and 53 seconds. Have a good break. Hey, folks, hopefully we are all back and ready to go. So let me trim some of this stuff down here. Just
I answered Kevin's question during the break, so we don't need to revisit that. He was just asking about custom groups.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So what we want to talk about now, let me just jump ahead here to my slides, kind of get back on track here a little bit, and let's talk about customizing here a little bit. There we go. So we're going to talk about customizing and tuning the Cloud SIEM. So you're going to find there are three things that we can do. We can write a rule tuning expression. A rule tuning expression is when you want to create an exception for the rule, because otherwise the rule will consistently fire. And so you may want to create a rule tuning expression that you can apply to one or many rules that, again, provide some sort of an exception or some sort of a situation. That's typically where you see rule tuning is exception. Then and I'll talk about that, lab 5, we're going to create a custom rule, specifically a custom match rule. Now, there are 4 different rule types that you can create. The custom match rule is fairly the easiest. A couple of them we will talk about in the admin class. So we'll show you 2 more that you can create in the admin class, but that won't be today. And then 6, we're going to talk about creating custom insight. Remember that an insight only fires when the score is greater than a certain amount. Well, maybe you create a rule and you want to, for troubleshooting purposes or testing purposes, you want it to fire off an insight. So you can create a custom insight for that. So that's what we're going to do here. And again, really what I want to focus on, the difference, right? Rule tuning is used to make an exception. A rule is obviously to fire something off based on that and to give it a severity score. And then finally, the custom insight is when you want an insight to fire, okay? Because remember, an insight normally fires after a certain score is obtained over a certain period of time. Now, how do we do all this? Well, we go into our Cloud SIEM Enterprise environment logic, and here under content is where we can select our rules, our rule tuning, and our custom insight. So let me take rule tuning first. Let me go into rule tuning. And again, let me also jump out here to lab 4, where we're going to create a rule tuning expression. So here in the PDF, right, we can create a rule tuning expression here. Now, in order for me to clean up this environment, it helps me a great deal if you and I and others, as we create these, use the following naming convention. Tuning expression with your initials, and then you can put your 3-digit number in there if you want for your account. But this way, I've got to clean these up when you are done with this. So I want to make sure that I can easily identify them. Right now, there are 4 rule tuning expressions in here, and these are the 4. I'm about to create the 5th. So on the upper right-hand corner, there's a button that says create. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give this thing a name. And as I mentioned, I am going to start with rule tuning. I'm going to add my initials, and then I can pick a 3-digit number if I want to. I don't care. I'm not worried about the number. I'm going to pick 007. There you go. Now, in order to do a rule tuning, I have to apply it to a rule. I can apply it to all rules, which is probably a little reckless, or I can apply it to a selected rule, but I have to apply it to a rule. So I'm going to pick a rule. So let's just do a search here for firewall. And come on, why am I not seeing firewall? Okay, hang on.
You gotta type the whole word.
Yeah, you do.
Firewall.
Yeah, I always like contains. There we go. So if I type in firewall. So basically, here's the scenario. The scenario is, look, I want this thing to alert if somebody's playing with the firewall. With the exception of me, if I'm doing this, I'm the administrator for that firewall. Don't send the alert out, okay? So basically, if I am managing the checkpoint firewall, I'm going to apply this to the checkpoint firewall. Normally, by the way, this rule would say enabled or active, not disabled, but just humor me for a moment. But basically, I'm saying, look, this exception is going to be applied to this firewall. By the way, down at the bottom, you'll see I can reset the conditions, I can submit this, and then there's this golden triangle. And this golden triangle is going to keep you out of trouble. I like the golden triangle. It's basically telling me what things I need to fill in before I can hit submit. Okay, so it's constantly evaluating the expression and making sure that things are correct. Now, what I want to do is, again, I want to apply this rule tuning to this particular rule. And I want to include, or I could exclude, records that match this expression. So I'm going to do kind of a crazy little logic thing here. So here I'm going to write an expression and I'm going to start typing in the word email. Okay. And I have email user ID, message ID, sender, all that stuff. I'm going to select user email. And normally I would say equals. And by the way, when we type expressions in here, we use single quotes. So if I type in one single quote, it automatically adds my closing single quote. So normally I could put in here my email address. Okay. And so what's going to happen is this rule is going to fire based on this condition. So when it gets to my email address and finds my Sumo logic email address, and I think I accidentally, hang on, so let me get rid of this command line. There we go. Okay. It would then fire. So what happens is I don't want it to fire when it gets to my email address. So I'm going to say not equals to. So you could either use a not equals to and include, or you can make this exclude and make it equal to. So you're defining the logic that's either going to include the logic of this or exclude the logic of this. But basically, I am creating a rule tuning expression that says, look, I want you to fire this off if somebody's playing with the checkpoint firewall, except for me. And I can click submit, and shazam, that new rule tuning expression is there. And if I want to see all the lovely rule tuning expressions, I can click on this, and I can see all these lovely rule tuning expressions. And the question is, why am I not seeing mine? It should be there. Give it a second here. And that's how to create a rule tuning expression. By the way, if you want to disable the rule tuning expression, you can obviously just disable it without having to delete it. Okay. So that's a rule tuning expression. Any questions? Let's talk about creating a rule. So again, under content, I select rules. And again, you can see we've got a bunch of rules in here. Most of these rules come from the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And we want to keep them there. So here in Lab 5, we're going to create a custom match rule. And so in my custom match rule, if I go to the upper right-hand corner, there is a create button. I'll click on that create button, and here are my 4 rule types. A match rule is going to be a simple expression. If my record matches that simple expression, this rule will fire. It's that simple. Simple match. Easiest of the rules to create. Another rule type is threshold rules, where I'm looking for a certain count of records that match a given entity in a particular period of time. So again, I want to see that the user wasn't able to log in 5 times successfully, or they logged in within such a certain period of time, whatever. A chain rule is like a threshold rule, and in fact, that it looks at certain periods of time, but it's got different things. So for example, a chain rule might be, I want to see if somebody hasn't logged in at least 5 times correctly. And then the second part of that chain is, then they were able to log in successfully. So that might be my brute force attack. And then the aggregation rule is I want to base on some form of aggregation. So I want to see when I at least get 100 DNS records, or a bunch of lookups, or DNS queries, or a certain period of time occurs. So these are my 4 rule types. And as I said, for this, we are going to go into the match rule. So when I click on match rule, again, the first thing I've got to do is give this thing a name. And it would help me immensely if you type in your initials and then called it match rule. Okay. Because what I've got to do is I got to clean it out when we finish this class. All right. Now in this rule that I've named, and again, if I scroll down, you'll see there's my golden triangle that says, hey, I'm missing a lot of things. And I am. So the first thing I want to do is discuss when it should be triggered. When do I want this triggered? And you'll find that on page 18 of your PDF, here on step 6, there is an expression that we're going to use. So I'm going to copy this expression, and I want you to be aware that, I'm sorry, excuse me. Wrong. Let's go out here. This expression, there we go. Sorry, we're on page 20, step 5. Device IP equals. Now I can take that expression and I can copy it and I can paste it. Of course, it helps if I copy the other one. So bear with me. Come on. There you go. So let's take this one. Now you could start typing ahead, device IP, and the IntelliSense will help you. Okay. Or like I said, you can copy and paste. When you copy and paste, be careful, because most things in a text document will change these single quotes to normal textual single quotes to smart quotes. And so you may have to retype those quotes in, again, also any special symbols. This is correct. It should say device IP equals, and then in my single quotes, I have something in red. That is a valid expression. Now I can also add my rule tuning expression to this if I want to. I'm not going to. The book has you do it. I don't particularly care one way or the other. So basically, this is my condition that's going to cause my rule to fire. Now, on entity, what entity am I reporting about? I'm reporting about my device IP. So I do need to specify an entity, okay? And then in my alert or my signal, I need to specify some name and some summary and some description information here. So I'm going to say something like suspicious IP, whatever. And then summary, Houston, we have a problem. And then I can put a full-blown description. This IP is a very suspicious IP. Okay, whatever. So bottom line is that you're filling out this information that you're going to display and put as part of the signal. Now, the other thing you're going to do is you're going to assign this thing a score. And as far as determining a score, my advice is that you start small. And if you need to make adjustments to it, you make them no more than 1, up or minus 1, 1. So for example, I have a suspicious IP. Is that the end of the world? Is that going to cause me problems? No. So maybe I'll make it initially a 2. Okay. Now, after I test it out, maybe I want to increase it. I just up it to 3. You don't adjust it plus or minus more than 1. You're trying to kind of figure out where the sweet spot is. And again, depending on the rule that you're writing, some things might be more serious than others, right? Somebody poking around my customer database, that I expect to be pretty severe. And by the way, the severity here is from 0 to 10. And again, this is going to be added up with other signals from that entity to determine whether or not an insight should be created. So I could make it a 0 so that it shows up as a signal, but doesn't affect any insights. So the range here is from 0 to 10. You might see that in a test question just a little bit. Now, what tags do I want to use? This is where I can use the MITRE technique and tags and stuff that I want. So maybe this is a discovery tag, and I can go in here and add as many tags and techniques as I think are applicable. Notice that when I've done all this, my golden triangle goes away. And there's one more very, very, very important thing here. Whenever you create a rule, you want to save this rule as a prototype. Now, when you click save this rule as a prototype, it means it will not fire off any insights based on this rule. So as you build a rule and you want to test it, you always want to mark them to save this rule as a prototype. Every one of our CSE experts, engineers, SEs, that sort of thing, always advocates save this rule as a prototype. Always, even for them when they're building it stuff, they always save it as a prototype. There is no exception. Now, once you've tested it and it's doing the behaviors that you want, then you can go back and you can unselect it. And now this can generate insights, but you don't want to generate a bunch of false insights accidentally. And so by marking this rule as a prototype, it will prevent it from generating any insights. Is that clear? And then I get to click submit, and voila, my rule is here. And again, if I go in here to my rules, I will see a listing of all my rules. And if I want to here, I can search for rules where the name contains my initials. Okay. And there you go. There's my match rule. Okay. And again, you can disable this if you want to. You can delete it if you want to. Later on after this class, I'll go back and delete these. Any questions about the match rule? Just one more thing to talk about. Under content, there is a custom insight. Now, again, normally you have to have an insight that is, a group of signals that is, connected by an entity that is going to score high enough to fire off an insight. There are times when you want an insight to fire off for whatever reason, regardless of score and stuff like that. For that, you can, I can, we can create a custom insight. And so I'll click create a custom insight. And again, I'll give you this thing a name. Okay. Okay. Good question. So Chad is asking a question here. When creating a new rule, how can we research what insights would potentially be applicable to our new rule? I would think, Chad, that you would probably want to look at the MITRE ATT&CK framework associated with that rule. That would be one way. Scott, do you have any insight here that you want to share?
That'd basically be about it, right? So you'd have to look at the individual signals you're trying to pick up, because you always want to, when you're creating a rule, you're starting from what you're looking for. So again, remember the insights are created by the building blocks of signals, right? So you have to kind of figure it out that way. And then from the MITRE ATT&CK, which is pulled from those signals, which insights would be triggered.
Thank you. One other thing, Chad, and that is before you start creating your own rules, recommend you check and see if we already have a rule that exists for that and that meets what you're looking for. Now, that being said, every company's got some interesting situations and they're always very unique to that company. And so I can certainly see the use case for creating rules. That's why it's obviously in the product. And so if you need to do that, then you need to do that. But again, you're going to create that rule, you're going to test it and not worry about it generating insight yet, because you're going to mark it as a prototype. And then as you're happy with the testing, then you can see how it generates that insight. But you can see what other insights it could affect. So yes, that's something. In fact, let's talk about the insights here. So I'm going to say I've got an insight editor here. I created a new custom insight. And I pick what rule I want. So I'm going to grab my JWM rule, my match rule. Now, I can say, look, I want this signal to be created when this rule occurs, regardless, okay? Or I can also add other rules. Let's go back to my checkpoint rule. Okay, there's a checkpoint rule. So I can say when these two rules get fired, I want to generate an insight. So obviously an exception. I'm not worried about points. I want to, and again, they could be in this order. It could be in any order. So you define the logic that's going to cause this insight to be fired. And then what do you want to call this insight? And by the way, I need to go up here and name my insight. Sorry about that. JWM custom insight. You'll notice it automatically took my name down here, brought it down here. And then I can put the description in here, there are scary things happening in these hills, whatever. Okay.
John, just a
Obviously,
quick
you'd be
update
like-
on that last question that Chad asked. There is a basic search functionality or trace functionality. When you're creating a rule, on the left-hand side, there is basically there's a button that will run a search on the left-hand side of the rule creation. So I pinged one of the other SEs out in the field and he let me know that.
Okay, cool.
So there's a
Give
way
us a
you-
second here. We'll try to show it to you. So yeah, we'll try to show it to you. Let me finish this up real quick. And then you can decide this insight's going to have either a low, medium, or high severity. And again, you're going to put in your MITRE ATT&CK framework. So you can, I can, we can. Actually, I'm going to get rid of this because I don't know what the effect of this is going to be. Okay. But you can create an insight now that, again, we can see these various custom insights that we can play with. Now, going back to that rule question, I believe it was Chad's question. Yeah, Chad's question here. So if I go back and I want to create a rule, or better yet, look at my rules. Sorry, wrong place there. You can, over here to the right. Scott, is this what we're talking about here? This right?
So Steve had said on the left-hand side in the rule creation. So go into create a rule,
Rule, yep, gotcha.
match rule.
I'm sorry, yep.
He said that there was something on there. Come down, there's a question mark.
Yeah, let me try one of the things here. So I saw something else over here on the rules when before I got into the actual rule itself. Over here, I thought I saw something. No, I guess not. Okay. So match rule and
Right above the reset conditions, you have a question mark and some other stuff. When a record matches the expression, keep coming down.
Yep.
What does that question mark do? No. There you go. Run
Yeah,
this rule expression.
Yep. So you can run this rule on the expression and see what the impact's going to be.
Yep.
Yep. So good question. Thank you, Chad.
Teach old dogs new tricks there, buddy.
That's it. That's it. So hopefully that gave you guys an idea of how to create a rule tuning expression, a rules expression, and a custom insight. And again, this PDF is yours to keep and yours to do again and again. If you want to come back and play with this, you guys are welcome to do that. But that should now take care of the course. So what questions have you before I turn you loose and get you ready for the exam? Any questions? All right.
Hey,
So to
John,
get-
this is Chad.
Yes,
Can you
sir.
hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you fine.
Hey, to kind of go back to the insight question, I guess what I'm looking for is more of an understanding of what actually generates an insight, right? So you create rules, and then those can be chained together in an insight, which is what we looked at with some of those mock investigations. But what's the logic that actually says, hey, when we see these different rules fire for this entity, create an insight?
Here's the logic that causes things to fire automatically, Chad. It's a good question. Remember, your signals are grouped together by an entity. Could be a host name, could be an IP address, could be a username, something that typically answers the who. So within a 2-week period, if I add the score of those various signals and it's greater than 12 within a 2-week period, and that's a rolling 2-week period, it automatically fires off an insight. So that's the logic that causes insights to fire normally.
Okay, so it's doing essentially risk-based alerting on either a user or a host or an IP address or something of that nature.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then
Yeah.
what about going across different entities or different user accounts that are all part of the same attack chain, right? So
So
user
you
A
can
gets
write a
compromised.
custom entity, a custom insight, You can write a custom insight that says, look, if this rule fires and this rule fires and this rule fires, fire off an insight, regardless of score.
Okay. But it doesn't, but out of the box with how insights work, they wouldn't track that host A was compromised, and from host A, user A logged into host B, and then host B reached out via some C2 channel. I wouldn't really chain those items together.
It probably would not chain those things together.
Okay.
So because they are different hosts, different entities.
Okay.
But if they're related to the same entity and that score is high enough, it would pop. It would generate an insight. But you could obviously, like I said, write your own custom insight to kind of depict that. Here's the problem. Imagine from our perspective across all of our customers, how would we write a rule like that and not affect everybody and screw some people up?
Mhm.
This is where you want to create your own custom insight, because you know your environment and you know that if somebody, for example, gets a phishing email, that it may promulgate to other hosts or promulgates to your servers. And so maybe you want to say, if I get a phishing email and then it goes, there's activity in the servers or whatever, then I want this insight to fire off so I can look into it.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
No problem. Thanks for asking. Appreciate it, Chad. Are there any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Again, we appreciate the questions. I know Scott does. I know I do. So, and again, this is up for us. This is still fairly new. So like I said, we're still in the process of learning a little bit more ourselves. So your questions help us with that. Thank you. Last conversation piece here is that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go back in here to Sumo Logic. And again, I want you to log out of the training account and I want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment so that you get credit for passing this exam. And if you go in and log in with your credentials, right? And if you've logged in like you did this morning to take your test, you should be able to click on the home tab here, the house, and then click on certification and click on get certified. And that should take you into our learning management system. And here in our learning management system, if you look for Cloud SIEM, you'll see there are 6 courses under this tile, right? So that's what it says. And if I click on this tile, you'll see that we have a quick little 40-minute pipeline on the Sumo security pipeline, where it goes through all those various phases of your data. Then here is the Cloud SIEM Fundamentals self-paced course. And here is the Cloud SIEM Administration self-paced courses. So not only do we do instructor-led classes, but we also have self-paced courses, which are integrated into our LMS. And we even have one here for threat hunting for Windows events, or as I like to call it, 4 events to rule them all, okay? So these are some self-paced courses that you can take. And again, they're my favorite price, free, right? I live up here in New Hampshire because there's no state tax, no income tax. The state motto is live free or die. Now, don't worry, they get us on property tax, so it's all fair. But down here is my Cloud SIEM Fundamentals exam. That's the course we are in. That's the exam we want to take. And so if I click on that, you'll see that you can register for that exam, and that's an instantaneous process. Boom, I'm registered. And there are 3 things to go through. So I'm going to do this. Don't follow me just yet. Just watch. Before you start, this exam only has 20 questions. and we got 60 minutes to complete it. Oh yeah, and a passing score is 70. So less questions, lower score, open book, open note, open slides. Yes, you can ask me and Scott questions if you get stuck. And then I click next, and then it proceeds to give me this terms of use, some legal boilerplate stuff, right? We don't want you to talk to your friends about these questions and all that fun stuff, right? Can't reproduce this stuff. It's property of Sumo logic, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, when I click next, it's going to get ready to start my exam. Now, this layout is a little different. This is going to be our new layout for exams, just so you know. Starts with an hour counter, 20 questions, 60 minutes, 1 attempt. Whenever you're ready, you fire it off by clicking the, and now you can go through and you can see your exam questions over here, and you can deal with them one at a time. So which item will a standard Sumo Logic Cloud SIEM see the most of, right? Insights, signals, threat intel hits, or records. I think we talked about records is what we'll see the most of. So I'm going to go on to the next question. When would looking at signals be preferred over insights? Okay. Maybe obtain a high-level summary of potential security events. Now I'm going to just answer these two questions, and I'm going to say, I'm going to just check out here, and I'm going to submit my answers. And it says, hey, John, you didn't pass. Can't say I'm shocked. And down here in my results, I can see what question I got right. I apparently got the second one wrong, so my bad. But I can then make sure you hit the submit results, so it adds it to your profile so that it is there in your profile when you're there. So please make sure you click that submit results when you're done. Otherwise, like I said, have fun, okay? Kevin says, my curriculum says I have to finish other modules before I take the exam. Any way to bypass this? I guess my question, Kevin, is where are you? Because if you're in the Cloud SIEM fundamentals, the only 3 thing you should have to see here.
Yeah, mine
is-
shows from logs to security insights.
Yep.
Then I've got introduction to threat investigation, which is locked. Tune your
Oh,
environment,
okay.
which
You're
is
in the
locked.
different, you're in the self-paced course.
Whoops.
You're in the self-paced course. So try
Good to
to
know.
exit out of that. And try to get here to the Cloud SIEM. Go to exam overview, and if you need to pop out of that, then you can come back in here. And again, you
Perfect.
want this Cloud SIEM fundamentals exam.
Wrong one. Thanks. Need more coffee.
No problem. No problem. Where are you located?
Atlanta.
Okay. Well, hopefully you've had enough coffee. It's about 3 o'clock.
No such thing as enough
Okay.
coffee.
That's true. I said the
No.
same thing at my Navy days, so I get it.
Yeah, so going back to that other question really quick. When you have something like you want to see, you know, kind of chaining of things together, that is the use case of the SOAR platform. If we automated that, you could just imagine the explosion of the web, you know, because it's more than just going from A to B. That thing is doing many other things, right? So by default, we create an insight around an entity. If that entity goes from one to another, that's going to be some level of investigation using the SOAR platform, which integrates with this technology. So then you could pivot off of your, you know, this user is doing something questionable. What other things of this user and what they touch do you want to investigate? And that's part of the SOAR platform. So I'm picking other engineers behind the curtain here. All right,
Very
I'll
cool.
mute.
No problem. Scott, so again, like I said, there's more to this, and you're going to see more training classes. You will eventually see a Cloud SOAR training class in here as well. We're just now starting to build it, because that's going to take this product and take it to another whole level where we can automate and create playbooks, is what they call them, with regards to different actions we want to take, automated or not automated, whether the humans are involved or not, to change the logic of what we're seeing. So it's going to be really, really, I mean, it's exciting already, but it's going to be far more exciting going forward to see some of the cool changes and stuff that we provide. And then what's going to be interesting is taking that SOAR product to the rest of Sumo logic and how we can automate some of that process as well. So looking forward to a lot of fun stuff coming down the pike. All right, are there any other questions about the exam or anything else? All right, turn on my camera one last time and thank you guys for being here today. I remind you that tomorrow we have one more session. It's in the morning at 9 a.m. And basically we're going to be focused on observability fundamentals. So another chance to take another certification exam, chance to learn more stuff. I think you're going to enjoy it, but like I said, that's for tomorrow. One last comment for those of you who will not be in tomorrow's session. Hopefully you'll all be there, but if you're not, again, Scott and myself will be at reInvent. So that's why I'm sharing my camera. I'm going to invite Scott to do the same. So you can put faces to names if you want to. And although we are wearing masks while we're there, but the bottom line is come on by and say hi. Otherwise, like I said, I want to thank you guys for being with us today. Scott, anything you want to add, sir?
So not only am I muted, but for some reason my camera is complaining and says it can't start. So just another older gentleman with no hair, and I have a beard. So that's how you can tell the difference between us.
Hang on a second, Scott. That would be on me. Hang on a second, Scott. Try it again, this time with feeling, please. Share your video. Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
There you go. So that was me. There was a setting here I forgot to enable.
And user error, no problem at all.
Yep, yep. Problem exists between the chair and the keyboard. Anyway, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be quiet, let you guys do the exam. Again, Scott and I are here to answer any questions. You get stuck on something, please let us know. Otherwise, good luck. Have yourselves a wonderful day. Please be safe out there. And like I said, when you're done with the exam, feel free to sign out and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks a lot.